Hello, 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 hello. This is your girl, Dr. Stephanie D. Barnes with C-Suite Women's Network, where I am the CEO and I help women and a few good men to be the CEOs of their lives. And being the CEO of your life means that you are making the decisions to create the life you desire and deserve. And so I am pleased to bring you the final series, or the final segment of the 5-part series. Are you a boss, or are you just bossy? What does your leadership bring to the yard? And we have been exploring in this 5-part series what it means to be a boss, being a leader, and how we can be better at influencing those around us to make the impact we desire in our jobs, in our communities, in our relationships, in our homes, in our businesses, and beyond. So we want to make sure that we're not just being bossy and ordering people around and relying upon power and position and authority to get things done, but that we are building genuine relationships and connecting with people in a way that we're able to inspire them to do great things with us. Because as being a CEO, it's important that you embrace the concept of working with others, because you don't have to do it all by yourself. You need other people. You need a team to effectuate your strategy. Because what does a CEO do? A CEO comes up with an idea, develops a strategy, works with a team, and inspires them to execute that strategy. And the only way that you can do that is through being a great leader. Because whether you have a job and you are leading people on a team there, whether you have your own business, unless you are a solopreneur, you are influencing others. You still have to work with vendors, you have to work with colleagues, you have to work with peers, and so that requires great leadership. So what I want to do today is to close out this series on being a boss. And again, what we're focusing on is being better leaders. So, of course, boss stands for something. It stands for, first of all, being the boss you wish you had, being the boss you want, owning your professional and personal SWOTs, your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, and seeing the vision for your leadership. And then today we're going to focus on setting your mind on inspiring others through your behaviors and actions. And of course, we've covered those other areas in days 2, 3, and 4. So hopefully you'll go back and view the first of the series if you've not had a chance to do so already. So let's get started. All right, so in inspiring others through your behaviors and actions is very important, because the heart of leadership involves relationships. And it's not, again, about the power you have, the authority you have. You don't even need to have CEO on your name tag, on your badge, on your desk, outside your office. But it's about how you carry yourself and how you make the decisions to encourage others to want to do what you want them to do. So on yesterday, we talked about seeing your vision for your leadership, and it's literally being deliberate about how you communicate with others, how flexible and adaptable you are, and then the level of focus that you have. So today what I want to do is bring all of that together and giving you some steps, some action steps on how you can set your mind to inspire others through your behaviors and your actions. And so again, you have hopefully completed the SWOT analysis, which again is looking at your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And again, you can go back to day 3 to get some information, some guidance on what that process looks like. We handle that in day 3. But as you've done that, of course, you want to focus on your emotional intelligence, which we've covered, your communication, your focus, and your adaptability and flexibility. Those are 4 key areas where your behaviors and actions show up as a way of influencing others. And again, you want to make sure that you're influencing people deliberately, as opposed to influencing them because you're unaware of what you're doing. You're subconsciously acting in a way that is counter to what it is that you want to accomplish. So once you have done this, it is important for you to then take responsibility, because as I've said, awareness creates responsibility. Once you know what your weaknesses are, you have a responsibility to look for ways to improve those, how to turn those into opportunities and to lessen them as threats. So we want to always think about responsibility in 5 key areas. You want to, first of all, reduce it to an action. It's all about your actions, because it's not about your desires, your aspirations, what you wish you could do, what you think you ought to do, but what are your actions? Because that's how your intent shows up, in your actions. Because you can say that you intend to do something, but if you never put any action towards it, that's really just an empty expression. So the first thing is action. The second thing is you have to identify what are the resources and support needed, because with any project that you do, with any effort that you undertake, with any endeavor that you set out on, you always need resources. And it's really important to be proactive in identifying what are those resources. Is it you need to take a class on something? Do you need to read a book on something? Do you need a coach in an area? Do you need an accountability partner? Do you need instruction? You know, really thinking about what are the resources that you need. Do you need certain software, tools, strategies that are going to enable you to be more effective in the areas that you've identified as strengths, and also those areas that you've identified as weaknesses? So that's the second thing. And then the third thing in being deliberate is expressing the expected outcome. What do you want to accomplish? What do you want to have happen? Because yesterday we talked about the importance of communication, particularly communication as it relates to expectations, because that's where a lot of relationships fail. Not just personal relationships, but professional relationships, business relationships. When people don't have clear expectations, then everybody comes to the table with their own idea of what the outcome is. So as a CEO, one of your responsibilities is to always state your expected outcomes. Why are we doing this? What do we want to see at the end? Is it a document? Is it a project? Are we trying to secure funds? You know, it's even so much as expressing the intent regarding, is this for action or is it for information only? Because if you come to a meeting, let's say, and all you want to do is brainstorm, but you don't express that as an intended outcome, and somebody else comes to the table and they're ready to take action, well, at the end of the meeting, and if all you've done is come up with ideas and you've taken no action, they're pissed off because their expectations have not been met. But if you're clear at the front that all I want to do today is just get ideas, all I want to do today is map things out, then their expectations can be aligned. And it also invites the opportunity for dialogue, because if they're really committed to taking action, then maybe you can have some dialogue about, well, why don't we move this along, and once we get the ideas, then decide upon some actions. But again, you have to state your expected outcomes. Then the next thing is your time frame. Okay, because if you're expecting it to be done now and they're expecting to do it when they can get to it, or 2 weeks later or a month later or whatever it is, then again, you don't have aligned expectations. So it's always clear to set the time frame. Not only is this good for aligning expectations, but it's also good for identifying if what you plan to do is realistic. Because I know if you're anything like me, you expect to get it all done right now, like boom, it's done. But when you lay it all out, when you map it out, you realize that the resources you need, you won't have access to them for another week, or it's going to take this time because you need to connect with this person and so forth. So it's really important for you to map that out, because again, it helps you to set your expectations, because expectations is really important. If you don't get anything else, it's all about the expectations. Because again, that's why so many relationships fail or have serious conflict, because you have misaligned expectations. So you'll hear this term over and over again, because your execution is only as good as your stated, understood expectations. So I want to say that again. Your execution is only as good as your stated expectations, understood expectations. I messed it up the second time, so let me say it a third time. Your execution is only as good as your understood expectations. Because again, when expectations are aligned, it promotes effective execution. Because execution is the ultimate end game for any CEO. It's literally, that's in the title, Chief Executive Officer. Executive means you're executing things, you're getting things done. Well, you can't execute what you have not expressed as an expectation. So again, execution is only as good as your understood expectations. And then the next thing that you need to do, the fifth thing, is really understanding how are you going to monitor progress. You know, is it going to be, we just get back together at the end when it's done, or we're going to have communication touch points in between? Because if you're working with people who do not require supervision, meaning all you need to do is tell them what needs to be done, give them a time frame, give them the resources, and boom, they're going to get it done, and you're constantly checking in, well, then they're going to perceive that as micromanagement. They're going to perceive it as a lack of trust. It's going to piss them off, and you'll slow them down. So it's really important to understand, who are you working with? You know, what are your expectations, that word is again, about communication regarding the progress. So if you want people to email you once a week with a little quick 3 bullet points, here's where I am. If you want people to text you as things come up, if you don't want them to text you or communicate with you or come by and see you until the end, then you need to say that. Because again, if you love to communicate in writing and they love to communicate verbally, and they're coming in to see you all the time, it's going to piss you off. And then you pissed off at them, when really what it boils down to is you didn't tell them what you want. You got to tell people what you need. One of the things that I talked about in an earlier segment is, guess what? The folks you work with can't read your mind. I don't care how smart they are. Eventually they learn your habits, they become intuitive, but ultimately they can't read your mind. So you have to tell them. So again, let's just kind of recap for a minute. One of the things that's really important as you are in setting your mind on inspiring others through your behaviors and actions, you have to be very clear on the action you're going to take and actually take it. You need to understand the resources and support needed, and as the CEO, provide it. You need to state the expected outcome so everybody knows where you're going. Imagine being on a road trip. Somebody says, hey, come on, let's get in the car, let's go. Where are we going? What's the first question you ask? Where are we going? People want to know where they're going. Nobody's just going to jump in the car with you and ride off down the road. Now, you may have some adventurous folks every once in a while. They're like, I don't care where we're going, let's just go. But grown folks, they want to know where we're going. So it's important to say your expected outcome, set your time frame, and then again, be clear on how you want to communicate progress. Because again, it's all in your communication regarding what you want. People cannot read your minds. So here is your challenge, because I always like to challenge you, and I always like to get you to thinking about, where are we going with this? What's the point? What do I need to do in order to put this into place? As a CEO, you need to be clear on your expectations and back your expectations up with the action that achieves the expectation. Now, I know that was a lot. So you be clear on the expectations. Take the actions that are necessary to actually back it up so that you can achieve it. Because you can't tell somebody an expected outcome and then you're acting counter to that, either because you're deferring, delaying, or denying what needs to be done. Okay? So now let's move on into, how you can really improve your leadership and your ability to influence others. On, day 3, we talked about owning your professional strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Personal SWOTs, right? It's very powerful if you undergo this exercise with someone else, because you are going to have a perception of your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. But it's important to get perspectives from other people. There are a couple of things that you will find. One, the strength you thought you had is not what other people see, and the weakness you thought you had, others may see as a strength. And it just really gives you an opportunity to see how you are perceived. Because sometimes we're hard on ourselves and sometimes we ain't truthful, all right? Sometimes we blowing the smoke up our own behind about how good we are. And, you know, when we go and interact with other people, then we get a realistic expectation of how we are perceived. Because if you are not doing the best that you can in communication, you may think that you're telling everybody what they need to know, but what they're hearing and what they're understanding is different than your perception. So as a CEO, you've got to develop tough skin, and you've got to develop the accountability it takes to get feedback from those that you serve. Because being a CEO is a servant leadership capacity. It's not about who's serving you. It's how are you serving others. Because remember, CEOs add value. If you're not bringing value, then you're not a CEO. You just being bossy, right? So you want to make sure that you are regularly getting that input. Now, here's something that I want to distinguish. I'm not talking about validation from others in the sense that you need that validation in order to perform. What I'm talking about is feedback as to how they perceive you. Because not everybody's going to get you. Not everybody's values are going to be aligned with yours. And not everybody's going to appreciate your leadership. So if you're looking to others for validation, you may not get it. And it's all about, you stating your values, stating your principles, understanding what it is that you want to accomplish, and committing to doing that, regardless of what other people think. Because sometimes you don't have the right folks on your team. Okay, they trifling. You are operating and expect others to operate at a certain level of excellence to which they do not aspire or cannot commit. And so if they're in a different space, then they're going to shoot down everything you do. So you won't get that validation. So again, it's not about seeking validation from others, but seeking their input and their perspective so that you can make decisions. Because remember, being a CEO is all about making decisions. And you can't make good decisions if you don't have good information. It's kind of like, was it garbage in, garbage out in terms of data, in terms of input? So if you don't have the sufficient data from the people that you're working with, then you're not going to be making sound decisions. You're going to be making decisions based on unsubstantiated assumptions. So as a CEO, you cannot afford to operate off of assumptions. You have to operate off of good data. So again, you are ultimately responsible for making the decisions, but you do need the information and perception of others so that you can understand the impact of the decisions that you will be making. So what I want to do now is just shift to some key things that you need as you are shaping your vision for your leadership. As I mentioned on yesterday, one of the things that I wanted to close this series out with is giving you some practical guidance on how to actually set the vision for your leadership. And the first thing is to actually state, what is the vision for my leadership? What does your leadership style look like? What do you want it to look like? Once you have optimized your strengths and opportunities, what does the vision of you as a leader look like? How are you perceived? What are and a way that you can do this is think about 5 words. Y'all know I like 5, right? So 5's my number. So think of 5 ways, 5 values that represent who you are and who you want to be as a leader. So that's the first step, is actually writing out your vision. Okay? The third thing you want to do, you've got to sharpen your strengths, right? So if you've done your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats analysis, your SWOTs analysis, pick the top 3 strengths, because you may identify 50, all right? You may identify 5, 10, whatever, but you want to be focused, because remember, that's one of the key aspects, is being able to focus. You can't focus on 50 things. You can focus on 3, and really you can only focus on 1 at a time. But again, you think about your top 3 strengths that you want to focus on to maximize your performance. All right, so the first thing is get your vision. The second thing, sharpen your strengths. All right, The third step is to grind. What are the top 3 weaknesses that you must leverage or grind in the opportunities? Because once you've identified, and remember, as you're doing this, you're thinking about it from the perspective of action, resources and support needed, expected outcome, time frame, and how will you monitor progress. All right, so you always want to be thinking with that cycle in mind. So what are the top 3 weaknesses that you need to leverage? How do you leverage? Either you stop doing them, right? You partner with someone who has a strength in an area where you're weak. You get training, coaching, mentoring around a certain area of weakness so that you can turn it into a strength. Or you get tools and software, different things like that that can help to obliterate rather or weaken your weakness. Okay, so that's the third thing. So the fourth thing that you want to think of is obliterate. All right, what do you completely need to stop doing? Because there's some weaknesses that can't be leveraged, that can't be you can't, what is it, let me see how to say this nicely. You can't buff a turd, right? Okay, because y'all know my colloquialisms, sometimes they get a little real. But you can't buff a turd. There's some turd characteristics of us that we just can't fix, and we need to get rid of them. You know, if we have a habit of disrespecting others, if we have a habit of, if we have tempers, there's no place for a temper in the workplace. You got it in the marketplace. You got to get rid of that. You know, what are some things that we're doing that we just shouldn't be doing? You can't fix them, and you can't turn them into something nice. So you really have to be realistic about the weaknesses that you must stop, abandon, and completely eliminate. Because otherwise, instead of becoming a better boss, you're going to be bossy, and people aren't going to want to work with you. Okay? So, number 5, shine. All right, what are the top 3 opportunities that you can leverage to strengthen your strengths or lessen a threat? Because remember, what hopefully you've done is you've identified your strengths, your weaknesses, your opportunities, and threats. So we're picking the top 3 in each of these categories, and we're going to figure out what we're going to do with them. And again, it's all about what are the actions you're going to take. Because remember, awareness creates a responsibility. All right? So what are the things that you're going to shine up? Because you can shine an opportunity. You can't buff a turd, but you can shine an opportunity so that it becomes an even greater strength for you. All right, and then slice. That's the next thing. I think we're on 6, right? Yeah, we're on 6. Slice. All right, what are the top 3 threats that could be the most detrimental to your leadership style? And remember, threats sometimes are things that are going on in your industry. They're things that are external to you, but they, again, are possibilities for weakening your ability to lead. So really think about those. All right, so now that you've identified your vision, you've identified your what you're going to sharpen, the strengths you're going to sharpen, you've identified the weaknesses you're going to grind, you've identified the opportunities you're going to shine, you've identified the weaknesses that you're going to obliterate because they have no place in your C-suite, and you have decided on the threats you're going to slice. Now let's think about strategies, okay? And again, that is a hallmark of CEO moves. You've got to have a strategy. And I always like to express strategies. You've heard the term SMART goals. It's something that's specific, it's measurable, it's achievable, it's realistic, and it's time-bound. You've got to be smart about what your strategies are. Okay? So once you identify all these things, you come up with a strategy, and then you've got to prioritize. Because you may come up with 10 things. Remember, you can't focus on all 10. You can probably focus on 2 or 3 at a time. So you prioritize and you figure out what is the most critical to do, because it probably at the top of that list, and it's something really easy, are the things that you're going to obliterate. All right? So, because those are things that you have identified as extremely detrimental to your ability to influence others in a positive way. Okay? And then, so after you develop your strategies, remember, CEOs don't do it alone. They don't work by themselves. They work with a team. So who is your SWAT team, right? And this is not the police sweeping in. What is it? I forget what SWAT stands for. Strategical Weapon Assault Team or something like that. But anyway, we're not finna assault anybody. But this is the team that's going to help you to maximize what you've identified in your SWOT analysis. So, these could be your coaches, your counselors, your cheerleaders. Remember, I always talk about there are 5 types of people you always need on your team. You need a coach, a counselor, a cheerleader, a connector, and a champion. A champion is going to be the person that advocates for you when you're not in the room. The connector is going to connect you to people and opportunities that are going to help you to achieve your goals. A cheerleader encourages you. The counselor is going to give you advice and be your therapeutic sounding board. They're going to be the person that listens to you. And then your coach is the person that refines and sharpens you. And sometimes these people are one and the same, but it's probably at least 2 or 3 people. It doesn't always have to be 5, but usually one person can't be all 5, okay? All right, so who is your SWAT team? And then the last thing is your stash, right? What are the resources, investments, and tools that you need to achieve your goals? Again, everything that you do requires an investment of your time, your energy, your commitment, and sometimes your cash, all right? So if you want to be better, then you have to, hey Kenya, you have to invest in yourself. And sometimes you have to invest in a coach. Sometimes you have to invest in a counselor. In other words, you invest in opportunities that are going to have returns for you. So it's really important to do that and to recognize, what do you need to sacrifice in order to achieve that level of excellence that you desire and deserve. So I know that I've gone through this quickly, so I'm going to just kind of rehash it for you. And in hopes that, you can use this to actively begin being a better boss. So the first thing is get a vision for who you are, sharpen your strengths, grind away the weaknesses that are going to, the top 3 weaknesses that are detrimental to you, obliterate those things that are just going to completely cause you to crash and burn, shine up your opportunities so that they can become strengths, slice away at your threats so that they can become less of a threat to you, develop your strategies and make them smart. Be smart about your strategies. And SMART stands for specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time bound. Okay? Get your SWAT team together. Your coach, your counselor, cheerleader, your connector, your champion. And then finally, get your stash together. What are the resources that you need, and what are you going to need to invest in to be the best boss that you can be? Because ultimately, you can't inspire others until you first have something to inspire them with. And if you can't inspire them because you're operating at a level of excellence that they wish to emulate and shape in their own way, then you're not going to see that excellence in them. Because as the leader, you set the tone for your team. You set the tone for your household. You set the tone for your business. You set the tone for your workplace team. So it all begins with you. And if you don't set your mind to being I like that hashtag best boss. If you don't set your mind to being the best boss, you're not going to get the best out of your team. So it all begins with you. Because if you just come into work, into your business, into your school, into your church, into your home, and all you're doing is bossing folks around, and you're not giving them a reason to want what you want for them, or what you want to do with them, or what you want them to do for you, if you're not adding value to them, then they're not going to want to invest their time, energy, or cash, or whatever it is into you. So, simple principles. You reap what you sow. Leadership is all about sowing into others so that you reap the benefits of their inspired actions. Because, yeah, you can threaten folks into doing stuff for you, but they're not going to operate at their best. They're going to operate at a level of, at a survival mode. Because they're going to do just enough to survive in that environment and not one thing more. But if you truly want to grow your business, if you truly want to grow your community, you want to grow your church family, you want to grow your home, your family, you have to invest in leading them. You have to grow other leaders as well. So as a boss, as a CEO, you should always be thinking about helping your team to lead from where they are. They may not be the leader, but they need to lead themselves. They need to lead their peers, because you're not going to always be around, literally and figuratively, because, you know, while you are out creating other opportunities, you're going to need the engine to keep moving while you're away. And you may want to move on to bigger and better things and have a totally self-sufficient team, right? So if the only way your team gets things done is if you're there breathing down their backs, you ain't being a CEO, you just being a bossy rather. You're just being bossy. You're not developing leaders. And, you know, leadership is so important in every aspect of our lives. And it's often underappreciated, because whether you're an entrepreneur, whether you work for a company, whether you are a stay-at-home mom, whether you are a leader or whether you are, you know, in the church, in the community, in a volunteer capacity, the only way that you are going to achieve excellence is to be the best boss, the best leader, the best CEO that you can be. So that's all I have in this series. Are you a boss or just bossy? What is your leadership bringing to the yard? This is the final series, or the final segment of this 5-part series. And if you've not gotten a chance to see the first 4 series, please go back to my timeline, and you can get the first 4 series. I'm eventually going to put this onto YouTube, and you can go to my YouTube channel at bit.ly/Stephanie on YouTube. Again, that's bit.ly/Stephanie on YouTube. And you can see this series and other videos that I have that are aimed at helping you to be the best CEO that you can be. So thank you so much for joining me. And of course, I always want to close out with a challenge. And the challenge for you is to be the best boss that you can be. And here's the thing to remember: whether you are a CEO on the rise, you are just getting started, whether you are a CEO on the move, you are emerging in your leadership capabilities, or you are an established CEO, this process is key for you to do at every stage. You are never at a point where you have learned everything that you can about being a great leader, and you never get to a point where you are the best leader you'll ever be. Even the best can become better. And I always love using the gold medalist athlete as an example. Even the gold medalist who has achieved a standard of excellence to be the best in the world, because the Olympics is a worldwide athletic competition. You know, even they train when they leave. I mean, even they continuously train. And as a leader, you have to continuously train and continuously invest in yourself and continuously commit to being the best boss that you can be. So your challenge is to be the best boss that you can be, and commit to setting your mind on inspiring others through your behaviors and actions. So the closing hashtag is this: my team will be as good as I am. My team will be as good as I am. And what that should tell you is, if you ain't good, your team ain't going to be good either. And sometimes your team is good in spite of you. I will say that. Sometimes your team can be good in spite of you, and that's because somebody in that team is leading better than you are. And as the leader of your team, you want to be sure that you're actively leading your team and they're not being led by someone else because you aren't able to step up to the plate and do what you need to do. So be a CEO, be accountable for your team, be accountable for your behaviors, and be accountable for your actions. So with that, I'm going to close it out. And as always, I want to share with you, of course, if you want to be refined, if you need a coach in helping you to be the best boss that you can be, then why don't you give me a text? You can text me at 228-238-7997. Again, that's 228-238-7997, and put in there your first name, your last name, your email address, and I want to be a better boss. I want to be a better boss. And if that is your desire, then I'll give you a call and we can discuss how I can be a part of your evolution as the best boss that you can be. So with that, I'm out. This is your girl, Dr. Stephanie D. Barnes, CEO of C-Suite Women's Network, where I work with women and a few good men to help them be the CEOs of their lives. And being the CEO of your life means that you are making the decisions to create the life you desire and deserve. So I'll see you next time in the next series. Be sure to go to bit.ly/Stephanie on YouTube to catch some of my other videos. And again, if you have not had a chance to view the first 4 parts of this series, you can either go back to my timeline or check my YouTube channel out once I get them loaded up there. But I do hope that this has been helpful to you, and I'm looking forward to seeing those hashtags about you being the best boss, because we don't want to just be bossy. We want to be the best boss, the best leader that we can be. So with that, I will see you next time. Bye-bye.